Thanks for joining me. In this video, I'll be exploring H.G. Wells's classic story in mixed media. As a VHS video and DVD of the 1960 film adaptation, as a Marvel Classics comic book from 1976, and as the original novel itself, along with an illustrated classics edition. I'll also be pasting descriptive text from the novel into an AI art generator to see what it creates based on that text.
I observed a vast green structure. It was larger than the largest of the palaces or ruins I knew, and the facade had an oriental look.
George Pal's 1960 adaptation of The Time Machine was a TV regular during my 1970s childhood, and I would make a point of watching it whenever it aired. Time travel was a new concept to my young mind the first time I watched this film. I sat fascinated as Rod Taylor's time traveller explored the immediate futures of his world, armed only with the charm and charisma that would make him a welcome visitor in any age that he should visit. George Pal managed to give his film adaptation a powerful emotional pull by cleverly magnifying the relationship between the time traveller and his loyal friend Philby.
George, I speak to you as a friend. More, as a brother. If that machine can do what you say it can, destroy it.
Mr. Philby, what?
He's gone.
This relationship is expertly handled from beginning to end, with it being revealed to the traveller during his early explorations of the 20th century that Philby never gave up hoping that he would return. And return he does.
George?
But only in a poignant scripted reunion between the characters and the actors that played them decades before. This reunion scene is part of the DVD extras documentary Time Machine, The Journey Back. I'll tell you more about where you can watch that scene later in the video. But for now, I'll focus on another story from that documentary, which explores the troubled history of the iconic time machine prop used in the film.
The Time Machine.
The documentary explores the machine's initial creation, design, and eventual sale at auction.
And the man who bought them loaded them into this huge moving van, and he traveled all over the country charging admission.
Its disappearance and subsequent reappearance years later.
Then two friends of Bob's, in 1974, in Orange County, walked into a thrift store. Do you believe this? A thrift store.
Its careful renovation.
The machine was in such bad shape when I got it. We weren't even too sure we could even put it back together, but we figured with the people we had who loved this film so much that they were volunteering their time to do it, and they knew we could do it.
And the love of its adoring fans.
Then it appeared on the excellent PBS series Cosmos, hosted by Carl Sagan, who found the machine so comfortable that he refused to come down from the 14-foot-high pedestal under the hot lights. Now, were you imagining which century you were in, Mr. Sagan? Were you in the past or the future?
What if we had one? Right here and now. Just imagine all the amazing things that are waiting for us out there between all the ticks and tocks of time.
The Time Machine's design in this film is a work of art, and it owes little to the bare-bones description of it by Wells in the book. For the next section of this video, though, I'll be using my own personal time machine. In the film, though not in the novel, the traveller tentatively explores the 20th century, first stopping in 1917 and meeting the son of his close friend Philby. Initially, the traveller mistakes him for Philby himself before being corrected. His son also reveals that his father was killed in the war only a year before, a revelation that deeply saddens the traveller. He then cruises through the London Blitz of World War II until eventually stopping in 1966. Once again he meets Philby's son, who is now an old man. Their conversation is cut short by an incoming nuclear attack, forcing the time traveller to escape in his time machine. In the process, he is trapped in volcanic rock for centuries before finally breaking free and stopping far into the human future. The time traveller now finds himself in a more peaceful space, the familiar first destination for the novel, dotted by buildings that are falling into ruin, all overshadowed by a white sphinx on a pedestal. But it's only the illustrated book that comes close to realizing the description of the white sphinx in the novel.
It was very large, for a silver birch tree touched its shoulder. It was of white marble in shape something like a winged sphinx. It chanced that the face was towards me. The sightless eyes seemed to watch me. There was the faint shadow of a smile on the lips. It was greatly weather-worn, and that imparted an unpleasant suggestion of disease.
I love the illustrated book's interpretation of that description. It has a subtle predatory look, enhanced by those vulture-like wings. Its face is never clearly seen, but I would expect it to have the subtle grin that the original text describes, as opposed to the over-the-top stone head carvings in both the film and the comic book adaptations. I didn't read the H.G. Wells classic until my late 30s, and I noticed the differences between the film and the novel. But those differences were fine with me, because I knew that both Wells and George Pal were masters of their respective arts. Not surprisingly, it's the illustrated book that also captures the essence of the Eloi race. Weena in the film adaptation is mentally childlike, but not physically so, and her fellow Eloi are more like rude teenagers than the innocent-minded creatures of the original novel. But only the Marvel comic book adds a sense of individuality to its Eloi and a sense of age progression from toddler to preteen to teenager. And it's as a teenager that Weena is depicted in the comic book, though mysteriously she's not the blonde-haired girl of the comic book cover. The illustrated book's depiction of the Eloi is one of a clone-like race of males and females, small in stature and almost identical to each other. Even though ahead of its time, there is often a suggestion in the novel of something akin to cloning taking place or having taken place in the past, as the following passage suggests.
These people of the future were alike, and the children seemed to my eyes to be but the miniatures of their parents. I judged then that the children of that time were extremely precocious, physically at least.
But the biggest difference between the novel and the film, and the one that struck the loudest chord in my own personal timeline, was the time traveller's relationship with Weena. I found it touching that their relationship in the novel was that of father and daughter, and not the potentially romantic one that was depicted in both the film and the comic book. The time traveller of the novel is clearly smitten with Weena.
By merely seeming fond of me and showing in her weak, futile way that she cared for me, the little doll of a creature presently gave my return to the neighbourhood of the White Sphinx almost the feeling of coming home, and I would watch for her tiny figure of white and gold as soon as I came over the hill.
Unlike the novel, the time traveller in the film saves Weena before the disappearance of his time machine. This scene is also our first introduction to the Morlock race. The scant and scattered descriptions Wells provides for the Morlocks in his novel leaves them open to interpretation, hence the differing depictions of them in all of my time machine memorabilia. But it is the Morlocks who have stolen the traveller's vehicle, and George Pal's film adaptation and the novel take different paths to retrieving it. They also have different takes on the fate of Weena. Weena comes to the traveller despite her fear of being outside after dark. She tells him that the Morlocks feed and provide for the Eloi, and that they must be obeyed. The traveller lights a fire to soothe and warm her, and just as in the novel, he's surprised when she curiously tries to touch it. She explains to him that she's never seen fire before. The next day, while the traveller listens to what he thinks is the sound of heavy machinery in the underworld, Weena tells him of the talking rings. But those rings are not part of the novel. The traveller in the novel spends much time musing about how this split in the human race might have occurred, and about the circumstances that created their codependent relationship.
Make it talk.
George Pal's rings scene is simply a speedy device to explain that split in humanity and the situation it now finds itself.
You won't come back.
I'll be back.
Now the traveller is even more determined to explore the Morlock world beneath his feet, which is something that he also does in the novel, and he barely escapes with his life. Forced to retreat and climb all the way back up to the surface, he collapses in exhaustion when he finally gets there.
Weena?
In the film adaptation, the traveller doesn't get to explore the underworld before air raid sirens sound, and a hypnotized Weena is drawn to the pedestal doors of the White Sphinx, along with the other Eloi. The traveller fails to find Weena in the throng, and she is lost in the underworld when the sirens end and the doors close once more. Now the traveller resumes his own journey to the underworld and soon discovers proof of what he's already guessed. That the Morlock are cannibals and are farming the Eloi for meat. He fights with the Morlock to free Weena, and soon the other captured Eloi begin to fight alongside him. They all escape to the surface, and the traveller encourages the Eloi to throw wood down into the underworld to aid the fire and kill the Morlock. Soon the White Sphinx starts to burn too, and the pedestal doors open to reveal the traveller's ride home. The traveller calls for Weena to join him as he readies his time machine. But she hesitates and the doors close again, trapping her outside and him inside. Along with some very angry Morlocks, who close in on our traveller as he tries to activate his machine. He manages to fend them all off and accidentally propels the time machine forward in a welcome excuse for some memorable special effects that absolutely made my jaw drop when I first saw them as a child. Soon, he manages to reverse the direction of his time machine and, exhausted, travels back to his own time and place in the heart of a Victorian London. All is different for our hero from the novel, though, and for little Weena. His trip to the Palace of Green Porcelain is born out of his own curiosity. The palace is actually an ancient museum. You'll find no talking rings in there, only useful things such as matches, dynamite, and potential weapons. After the visit to the palace, he lights a fire to alleviate Weena's fear of the dark, which ultimately triggers a forest fire that spreads fast in the dried-out woodland. The raging flames create a commotion amongst the many Morlocks who are tracking him as they try to escape the fire. Our traveller loses Weena in the commotion and attacks the Morlock hordes. Once the fire has calmed, he searches high and low for little Weena, but his search is fruitless and her fate is left hanging. Heartbroken, he returns to the White Sphinx to find the pedestal doors wide open and his time machine waiting for him. But it's a trap. The Morlock close the doors and close in on him. He fends them off and escapes by travelling forward in time to what seems to be the end of the earth itself and of the star that nourishes it. Only then does our traveller return to his own time in a haggard and dishevelled state to tell his dinner guests of his incredible adventure. The novel is a credit to its author, the great H.G. Wells, and the film adaptation is a credit to its director, the great George Pal. He saw in the novel a close friendship between the traveller and Philby, and he laced his film with the love and loyalty that fuels such a friendship. And that's the real engine that propels his classic film, not the time machine.
Thanks for being such a good friend, David. Always.
George. Oh, you're back. Oh, thank God you're back. Oh, George.
I've made a playlist for this video, and that is where you'll find the full documentary of Time Machine, The Journey Back, along with other great videos I found during my research. I'll leave a link to that playlist in my description and on video card. If you enjoyed watching this video, then please consider clicking the like button and subscribing for more. My name is Ed, and I post regularly on this platform. You'll find a list of future uploads in the description section of my channel trailer. I also invite you to browse the channels that I'm subscribed to. You'll find many memorabilia and media-related channels there that may interest you. Thanks for watching.